The train whistle blew loud and long as it pulled into Silver Creek Station. Margaret Hayes gripped her small leather bag tighter. Her hands were shaking. She had been traveling for 3 days and 2 nights. Her body was tired. Her dress was wrinkled and dusty. But her heart was beating fast with hope. She was 38 years old. This was her chance for a new life, a fresh start in Montana, far away from Boston where everyone knew her story, far from the whispers and the pitying looks. Margaret stepped down from the train. Her legs felt weak after sitting for so long. The platform was busy with people. Men carried boxes and bags. Women held children's hands. Everyone seemed to know where they were going. Everyone except her. She looked around nervously. She was searching for a face she had only seen in one photograph. Thomas Bennett. The man who would be her husband. The man who had placed an advertisement in the Boston newspaper looking for a wife. The man she had written to for 3 months. In her letters, Margaret had been careful. Very careful. She told him about her love of cooking, about her skill with sewing, about her quiet nature and strong faith. She told him she was a widow with no children. That part was true. The sad, painful truth, but she had not told him everything. She had not mentioned her real age. When he asked, she said she was 28, 10 years younger than the truth, and the photograph she sent was old, from a time when her hair had no gray, when her face had fewer lines, when she looked like the young bride she once was. Margaret felt guilty about the lie. She did, but she was also desperate. No man wanted to marry a woman near 40. She had answered 6 other advertisements before Thomas Bennett. All 6 men stopped writing when they learned her age, or when they guessed it from her words. So this time she lied, and Thomas Bennett had written back. His letters were kind, simple. He told her about his farm, about the town, about how lonely he was. He said he wanted a good woman to share his life, someone to cook his meals and keep his house, someone to sit with him in the evenings. It sounded perfect to Margaret, better than her life in Boston, better than living with her sister's family, sleeping in a small room under the stairs, helping with her sister's 6 children, being treated like a servant in a house that would never be her home. Thomas had sent money for the train ticket, enough for the journey and a little extra. He said they would marry as soon as she arrived. He had already spoken to the preacher. Everything was ready. Margaret's heart pounded as she scanned the crowd again. Then she saw him, a man holding a piece of paper with her name on it. He was tall and thin, maybe 35 years old. His hair was dark brown. He wore clean work clothes and a nervous expression. She walked toward him slowly. She could feel people staring at her. A woman traveling alone always drew attention. She kept her eyes on Thomas Bennett. She tried to smile. When she was close enough, she spoke. Her voice came out softer than she intended. "Mr. Bennett, I am Margaret Hayes." The man looked up from his paper. His eyes met hers. And in that instant, Margaret saw everything change. His face, which had looked hopeful and nervous, went blank. Then confused. Then something worse, disappointment, maybe even anger. "You're Margaret Hayes?" His voice was flat. "Yes, sir." "I am." She tried to keep smiling, but her smile felt frozen on her face. Thomas Bennett looked her up and down. His eyes took in every detail. The gray streaks in her auburn hair, the lines around her eyes and mouth, the way her hands looked older than they should. Hands that had worked hard for many years. "How old are you?" he asked. His voice was not kind anymore. Margaret felt her face grow hot. People nearby had stopped talking. They were listening now, watching the scene unfold. I am 38, Mr. Bennett." Her voice shook. She wanted to explain, to tell him that age did not matter, that she would be a good wife, a hard worker. But the words would not come. 38. He said it like a curse word. "You said you were 28. You sent me a picture of a young woman. The picture was a few years old, but it was me." A few years?" Thomas Bennett's voice got louder. More people were staring now. A small crowd was forming. "That picture shows a woman half your age." "You lied to me." Margaret felt tears burning in her eyes. But she would not cry, not here, not in front of all these people. "I am sorry, Mr. Bennett, I should have been honest. But I am still the same woman who wrote those letters. I can still be a good wife to you. I can cook and clean, and I asked for a wife, not a mother." His words were cruel, sharp as knives. "I am 34 years old. I want a young wife, a woman who can give me children, not some old widow who lied her way onto a train," the crowd murmured. Some people looked shocked. Others nodded in agreement. An older woman clicked her tongue in disapproval. But Margaret did not know if the woman disapproved of her or of Thomas Bennett. Thomas reached into his pocket. He pulled out some bills. Money. He held them out to her. Here. This is enough for a ticket back to Boston, or wherever you came from. I am sorry you traveled all this way. But this will not work. I cannot marry you. Margaret stared at the money. Her whole body felt numb. This could not be happening. She had used all her savings for this trip. She had said goodbye to her sister. To the children, she had packed her few belongings. She had left everything behind for this chance. Please, she whispered. Please, Mr. Bennett, I have nowhere else to go. But Thomas Bennett just shook his head. He pushed the money into her hand. Then he turned and walked away. Just like that. He walked away and left her standing on the train platform with everyone staring. Margaret stood frozen. She could not move. Could not think. The money felt heavy in her hand. Around her, people began to whisper. She heard their words. Poor thing. She should not have lied. What will she do now? Probably go back where she came from. Slowly, Margaret made her feet move. She walked to her trunk. The porter had left it near the station wall. She sat down on it. Right there on the platform. She did not care anymore what people thought. She had been so foolish. So stupid to think she could have a new life. To think any man would want her. She was too old, too plain, too worn down by life. The lie had only delayed the truth. For a long time, Margaret just sat there. The crowd slowly went away. The train pulled out of the station. New passengers came and went. The sun moved across the sky, and still she sat. She had nowhere to go. No money except what Thomas had given her. Barely enough for a ticket home. If she could still call Boston home. The afternoon sun was getting lower when a shadow fell across her. Margaret looked up. A man stood there. Not Thomas Bennett. Someone else. He was older, maybe in his 40s, tall and broad-shouldered. His face was deeply tanned from the sun. His eyes were a clear gray color, kind eyes. Tired eyes, ma'am, he said. His voice was deep and quiet. I do not mean to bother you, but you have been sitting here for hours. Are you all right? Margaret almost laughed. All right? No, she was not all right. Her life was ruined. Again. I am fine, thank you. The lie came automatically. The man looked at her for a long moment. Then he glanced at her trunk. At her worn dress. At the crumpled bills still in her hand. I saw what happened earlier, he said, with Thomas Bennett. I am sorry. He was wrong to treat you that way, in front of everyone. Fresh tears came to Margaret's eyes. The kindness in his voice broke something inside her. I lied to him, she said. About my age. I deserve what happened. No. The man's voice was firm. No one deserves that kind of cruelty. A lie about age is not the worst sin in the world. We all want to be wanted. Margaret looked up at him again, really looked at him. His face was weathered but handsome. There was sadness in his eyes. Old sadness that had been there a long time. My name is James Thornton, he said. I own a ranch about 10 miles north of here. I came to town for supplies, he paused. Seemed to be thinking carefully about his next words. My house needs a housekeeper. Someone to cook and clean. I would pay fair wages. And you would have your own room. No expectations beyond the work. If you need a place to stay while you figure out your next step, the job is yours. Margaret stared at him. Was this real? Or some new kind of trap? Why would you help me? She asked. You do not know me. James Thornton's mouth moved in something that was almost a smile. Almost but not quite. Because I know what it is like to be alone, he said simply. And because everyone deserves a second chance. He held out his hand. Not to shake, but to help her up. To lift her from her trunk and her despair. Margaret looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she took it. His grip was strong and steady. He pulled her to her feet easily. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Just James, he said. He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing. Welcome to Montana, Mrs. Hayes. Let us get you home. As they walked to his wagon, Margaret felt something strange. Something she had not felt since arriving in Silver Creek. Hope. Just a little. But it was there. The wagon ride to the Thornton Ranch took nearly 2 hours. The road was rough and dusty. Margaret sat beside James Thornton on the wooden seat. Neither of them spoke much. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that came after a very long and terrible day. Margaret watched the land pass by. Montana was beautiful in a way she had not expected. The sky seemed bigger here than in Boston, wider. The grass rolled on forever. In the distance, she could see mountains with white tops. Everything felt open. Free. So different from the crowded streets she had left behind. James drove the wagon with steady hands. He did not try to make conversation. Margaret was grateful for that. She was too tired to talk, too hurt to pretend to be cheerful. She just wanted to close her eyes and forget this whole day had happened. When they finally arrived at the ranch, the sun was setting. The sky was painted pink and orange and purple. It was the most beautiful thing Margaret had seen in a long time. For a moment, she forgot to be sad. The ranch house was bigger than she expected, 2 stories, made of wood that had turned gray from years of sun and wind. There was a porch across the front, a barn nearby, a few other buildings scattered around. Everything looked solid but worn, like it had been there a very long time. James helped her down from the wagon. He carried her trunk to the porch. "I will show you inside," he said. "You must be hungry." Margaret realized she was. She had not eaten since morning. Her stomach felt hollow and tight. Inside, the house was dark until James lit a few lamps. The warm glow showed a large room. A kitchen on one side, a sitting area on the other. Everything was neat but dusty. The furniture was simple, strong, made for use, not for show. "The house has not had a woman's touch in a long time," James said. He sounded almost apologetic. "My wife died 7 years ago. I tried to keep things clean, but—" He trailed off with a shrug. "I am sorry for your loss," Margaret said softly. James nodded. He did not say anything else about his wife. Instead, he showed Margaret around. There was a bedroom downstairs that would be hers. It had a bed, a dresser, and a small table. Simple but clean. The window looked out over the fields. "The washroom is through there," James pointed. "I have my room upstairs. My son's old room is up there too, but he does not use it anymore. He went to college back east. He does not write much." Margaret heard the sadness in his voice when he mentioned his son, but she did not pry. Everyone had their hurts. "Their private pains. I will make us some supper," James said. "You must be tired. After we eat, you can rest." "No," Margaret said. "Please let me cook." "I would like to. It will help me feel useful." James looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right. I will show you where everything is." The kitchen was well stocked. Flour, beans, dried meat, potatoes, canned goods. James explained that he went to town once a month for supplies. He had just bought fresh eggs and bacon that morning. Margaret rolled up her sleeves and got to work. It felt good to have something to do, something normal. She made bacon and eggs, fried some potatoes, made coffee strong and hot. It was simple food, but it smelled wonderful. They ate at the kitchen table. James ate quickly but not rudely. Like a man who usually ate alone and saw meals as fuel, not pleasure. Margaret ate slowly. Her stomach was nervous. Everything from today felt unreal. Like a dream, or a nightmare. "This is very good," James said. "Much better than my cooking. I usually just eat whatever is easiest." "Thank you." Margaret felt a small warmth from the compliment. It was nice to be appreciated, even for something small. After supper, James showed her where the dishes were washed, where the cleaning supplies were kept, where she could find linens and towels. He explained his routine. He woke at dawn, had coffee and bread for breakfast, worked outside until midday, came in for lunch, worked until evening, had supper, then sat in the parlor with his books or papers until bedtime. "I do not expect you to follow any schedule," he said. "Do things however works best for you. I just ask that meals are ready around midday and evening. Breakfast I can manage myself." "I can make breakfast," Margaret said. "I wake early anyway." James nodded. "As you wish. We can figure things out as we go." He paused. "I will pay you $10 a month, plus room and food. Is that fair?" $10 was more than fair. It was generous. Margaret felt a lump in her throat. "That is more than fair, Mr. Thornton." "Thank you." "James," he corrected gently. "Please, just call me James. Mr. Thornton was my father." "Then you should call me Margaret." He nodded, almost smiled. "Margaret, Good night, then. Sleep well. Good night, James. Margaret went to her room. She unpacked her few belongings, hung up her 2 dresses, put her extra shoes under the bed, set out her brush and mirror. It did not take long. She did not own much. She sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was firm but comfortable. Through the window she could see stars. So many stars. More than she had ever seen in the city. They looked close enough to touch. Margaret thought about the day, about Thomas Bennett's cruel words, about the stares and whispers, about sitting on her trunk with nowhere to go. Then she thought about James Thornton, a stranger who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if she would stay here or go back to Boston. But tonight she had a bed. She had food in her stomach. She had a roof over her head. For now, that was enough. The next morning, Margaret woke before dawn. Years of rising early had trained her body. She dressed quickly in her work dress, a plain gray one that was sturdy and practical. She pinned up her hair, washed her face in the cold water from the pitcher. When she came out to the kitchen, she found James already there. He was making coffee. He looked surprised to see her. "You did not have to get up so early," he said. "I wanted to," Margaret replied. "Please let me finish the coffee, and I will make breakfast." James stepped back. He watched as she took over the kitchen. She worked quickly and efficiently. Scrambled eggs, fried bacon, made toast from yesterday's bread. Set the table with plates and cups. They ate together in comfortable silence. James kept glancing at her, like he was not used to having someone else in the house. Margaret understood. She was not used to being here either. "I will be working on the south fence today," James said. "It needs mending. I will be back for lunch around noon." "I will have it ready," Margaret promised. After James left, Margaret looked around the kitchen, then the rest of the house. There was so much to do, so much cleaning and organizing, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt energized. This was something she knew how to do, something she was good at. She started in the kitchen, scrubbed every surface, washed all the dishes and put them away neatly, swept the floor, cleaned the windows until they sparkled. The work felt good. It felt right. By midday, the kitchen looked completely different. Brighter, cleaner, more like a home and less like a place where a man just survived. Margaret made lunch. Sandwiches with the leftover bacon, sliced apples, more coffee. When James came in, he stopped in the doorway. He looked around the kitchen with wide eyes. "You did all this in one morning?" he asked. "The kitchen was not so bad," Margaret said. "Just dusty. It has good bones." James sat down at the table. He looked at the clean windows, the shining counters, the floor that no longer had dust in the corners. "It looks like it did when—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "When my wife was alive." "Thank you, Margaret." They ate lunch together. James told her about the fence, about the cattle, about the 2 ranch hands who came to help during busy seasons, but mostly he worked alone. Margaret listened. It was nice to hear about simple things, normal things, things that had nothing to do with trains and lies and broken dreams. The days fell into a pattern. Margaret woke early, made breakfast, cleaned and cooked during the day, made lunch and dinner. In the evenings, she would mend clothes or read by lamplight. James would sit across from her working on his ranch accounts or reading his own books. They did not talk much. But the silence was comfortable, easy, like 2 people who did not need words to feel less alone. Margaret worked through the house room by room. She washed curtains and hung them back up, scrubbed floors, dusted furniture. She found linens in a chest and mended the ones with holes. She organized the pantry. She even cleaned James's bedroom while he was out working, though she felt strange going into his private space. Everything she touched seemed to come back to life. The house began to feel warm, lived in, like a home instead of just a building where someone slept and ate. James noticed. He did not say much, but Margaret could tell. He smiled more. Small smiles, brief, but they were there. He started lingering at meals, talking a bit more, asking about her day, telling her about his. One evening, almost 2 weeks after Margaret arrived, James came in from work and found her in the kitchen. She was making stew. The smell filled the house, rich and savory. James stood in the doorway and just breathed it in. "That smells like heaven," he said. Margaret turned and smiled, a real smile. The first real smile since she had arrived in Montana. "My mother's recipe," she said. I have not made it in years. I hope it turns out well. They ate the stew together. James had 2 bowls. Then a third. Margaret felt proud, pleased. It was a simple thing. Just food, but it mattered. It meant something. After supper, they sat in the parlor as usual. Winter came early to Montana that year. Margaret had been at the ranch for almost 2 months when the first snow fell. She woke one morning to find the world outside her window completely white. Everything was covered in a thick blanket of snow. It was beautiful and frightening at the same time. James came in from checking on the animals with snow covering his coat and hat. His face was red from the cold. Margaret had hot coffee waiting for him, and a warm breakfast of oatmeal and bacon. "Big storm coming," James said as he warmed his hands on his coffee cup. "The old-timers in town were talking about it last week. Said it would be a hard winter. I think they were right." Margaret looked out the window. The sky was heavy and gray. More snow was definitely coming. "Do we have enough supplies?" she asked. James nodded. "I stocked up last month. We should be fine, but we might be stuck here for a while. The roads get bad when it snows like this, sometimes for days or even weeks." The thought of being completely alone with James for weeks made Margaret nervous, not because she was afraid of him. James had been nothing but kind and respectful, but because she had started to feel things she should not feel. Things that confused her. She had started to notice small things about him. The way he smiled when he came in and smelled dinner cooking. The way he thanked her after every meal. The way he sometimes looked at her when he thought she was not watching. The way her heart beat a little faster when he was near. It was foolish. She was his housekeeper. That was all. He had given her a job when she needed one. Nothing more. She needed to remember that. The storm hit that afternoon. The wind howled around the house. Snow fell so thick that Margaret could not see the barn. It was like the whole world had disappeared. There was only the house. Only them. James brought in extra firewood. He made sure all the windows were sealed tight. He checked the animals one more time before dark. When he came back in, his coat was covered with so much snow that he looked like a snowman. Margaret had to help him brush it off. Their hands touched as she reached for his coat. Just for a second. But Margaret felt warmth spread through her from that simple touch. She pulled her hand back quickly, turned away so he would not see her face go red. That night, the storm got worse. The wind screamed. The house creaked and groaned. Margaret tried to sleep but could not. She kept thinking about the storm, about being trapped here, about James sleeping upstairs, about feelings she should not have. The next morning, the storm was still raging. James came downstairs looking tired. He had not slept well either. "I have never seen a storm this bad so early in the season," he said. "We might be stuck for a while." Days passed. The storm continued without stopping. Margaret and James fell into a new routine. They spent more time together. There was nowhere else to go. Nothing else to do but talk. At first, their conversations were simple. About food. About the weather. About the house. But slowly they began to talk about other things. Real things. James told her about his wife. Her name was Sarah. She had been young and full of life. She got sick one winter. A fever that would not break. She died in 3 days. James had held her hand and felt helpless. After she died, he threw himself into work. Into building the ranch. Into raising their son. "I was not a good father," James admitted one evening. They were sitting by the fire. The storm was still howling outside. "I was too sad, too angry at the world. My son needed me, but I was lost in my own grief. When he got old enough, he left. Went to college. He writes sometimes, but not often. I do not blame him. I failed him." Margaret saw tears in his eyes. She wanted to reach out, to comfort him. But she kept her hands folded in her lap. "Grief makes us do strange things," she said softly. "It does not make us bad people, just hurt people." James looked at her. Really looked at her. "You understand? You lost someone too," Margaret nodded. She had not talked about her past much. But something about the storm, about being trapped here together, made her want to share. "I was married for 6 years," she said. "My husband was a good man. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl." She stopped. Her voice caught. "They all died. Scarlet fever. Within 2 weeks, I lost everyone I loved. My husband, my babies, everything." James made a sound, a soft pain sound. "Margaret, I am so sorry. After that, I lived with my mother. Took care of her until she died 2 years ago. Then I went to live with my sister. But I did not fit there. I was just extra. Just someone in the way. She looked at the fire. I thought becoming a mail-order bride would give me a purpose again. A family. A place where I belonged. But I was wrong. I tried to trick my way into a life that was not meant for me. You did not trick anyone, James said firmly. You just wanted what everyone wants. To be loved, to belong. There is no shame in that. Margaret felt tears on her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly. I am sorry. I should not burden you with my sad stories. It is not a burden. James moved closer. He was sitting beside her on the sofa now, close enough that she could feel the warmth from his body. I am glad you told me. I want to know you, Margaret. The real you. Not just the woman who cooks my meals. Their eyes met. Margaret's heart was pounding. The air between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. James reached out slowly. He took her hand. His hand was rough and calloused from work, but his touch was gentle. Margaret, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. Before he could continue, there was a loud crack. They both jumped. The sound came from outside. In the morning, they would discover that a tree branch had broken under the weight of ice and snow. But in that moment, it broke the spell between them. James pulled his hand back, stood up quickly. I should check the fire in my room. Make sure it is still going. He left the room fast. Almost running, Margaret sat alone by the fire. Her hand still felt warm where he had touched it. What had he been about to say? What had she been about to say? The next few days were awkward. James avoided being alone with her. He ate his meals quickly, spent more time in his room or checking on things outside, even in the storm. Margaret felt the distance between them like a physical pain. She had ruined everything. He had been about to say something important, and she had just sat there like a fool. Now he was uncomfortable. He probably regretted hiring her, regretted bringing her to his home. On the 5th day of the storm, it finally stopped. The sun came out. The world was blindingly white and beautiful. James went out to check the damage. Margaret baked bread to keep busy, to keep her mind off her confused feelings. When James came back in, his face was serious. The main road is blocked. Trees are down everywhere. It will be days before anyone can get through. Maybe a week or more. Margaret's heart sank, stuck here even longer. With this tension between them, it was unbearable. That night she could not sleep. She kept thinking about James, about his hand holding hers, about the look in his eyes, about the words he had not said. Finally she got up. She put on her robe and went to the kitchen for water. James was there, sitting at the table in the dark. He had a cup of whiskey in front of him. He looked up when she came in, looked surprised. I could not sleep, Margaret said. Neither could I. James gestured to the chair across from him. Sit, please. Margaret sat. They looked at each other in the dim light from the dying fire. I owe you an apology, James said. I have been avoiding you. That was wrong and rude. You did nothing to deserve that. You do not need to apologize, Margaret said. I understand if you are uncomfortable. If you want me to leave when the road's clear, I will understand. No. James's voice was sharp, urgent. No, I do not want you to leave. That is the problem. He ran his hand through his hair. Margaret, these past weeks, talking to you, spending time with you, it has made me realize something. This house is not just cleaner because you are here. It is warmer, brighter. You make it feel like a home again. Margaret's breath caught. She did not know what to say. James continued, his words coming faster now. I told myself I was just being practical, that I needed a housekeeper, that this was just about having help with the house. But I was lying to myself. He met her eyes. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I hurry back from work because I want to talk to you. I sit across from you in the evenings and feel happy. Actually happy. For the first time in 7 years. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. The other night I almost told you how I feel, but I stopped myself. Because you came here to marry Thomas Bennett. You wanted a husband. A real marriage. Not some lonely rancher who is too old and too broken by grief. He shook his head. I have no right to have feelings for you. You deserve better. Someone whole. Someone who has not forgotten how to be a good partner. Margaret stood up. She walked around the table. She stood in front of James. He looked up at her, confused. James Thornton, she said firmly. Stop telling me what I deserve. Stop deciding for me what I want. She took his face in her hands. His eyes went wide with shock. I came here for the wrong reasons. I was looking for security, for a place to belong, for someone to need me. But I found something I was not looking for. Her voice shook. I found a man who is kind, who listens, who shares his grief and his fears, who makes me feel seen, not as someone too old or too damaged, but as myself. Margaret. James breathed her name. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow melted little by little. Green grass started to push through the brown earth. Birds returned. The world came back to life. And so did Margaret's heart. The months after the storm had been wonderful. James was courting her. That was the word he used, courting. It made Margaret smile every time. Like they were young people from another time. Not two middle-aged people who had both known loss and loneliness. But it felt right. James brought her wildflowers from the fields, small bunches of yellow and purple blooms. He taught her to ride a horse, a gentle mare named Daisy. They would ride together in the evenings when the work was done, just riding and talking and being together. They held hands now, not all the time, but sometimes, when they sat together in the parlor, when they walked to the barn, small touches that meant everything. James had not kissed her yet. Margaret wondered about that. Did he not want to? Was he waiting for something? She did not know, and she did not ask. She did not want to seem forward, but she thought about it. She dreamed about it. Things were good. Better than good. Margaret felt happy. She felt like she belonged. The ranch felt like home now. James felt like, well, he felt like hers, and she felt like his. Then one morning in late April, everything changed. Margaret was in the kitchen making bread. Her hands were covered in flour. She was kneading the dough and humming to herself. James was outside fixing a fence. It was a beautiful day. Warm and sunny. The kind of day that made you grateful to be alive. She heard a horse coming up the road. That was unusual. They did not get many visitors. James was not expecting anyone. Margaret wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window. A man on horseback was riding up to the house. He tied his horse to the post and walked up to the porch. Margaret heard him knock on the door. She smoothed her hair and opened the door. The man was young, maybe 19 or 20. He wore town clothes, clean and proper. He held his hat in his hands. "Good morning, ma'am," he said politely. "I have a letter for Mrs. Margaret Hayes. Is she here?" Margaret's heart skipped. A letter for her. That was strange. Who would write to her here? "I am Margaret Hayes," she said. The young man handed her an envelope. It was white and clean. Her name was written on it in careful handwriting. She recognized that handwriting. Thomas Bennett. "Thank you," she managed to say. The young man tipped his head and left. Margaret stood on the porch holding the letter. Her hands were shaking. Why would Thomas Bennett write to her now? It had been months since that terrible day at the train station. She went back inside. She sat at the kitchen table. She stared at the letter for a long time. Finally, she opened it. The letter was short. Thomas Bennett's handwriting was neat and formal. Margaret read it once, then again, then a third time. Each time, her heart sank a little more. "Dear Mrs. Hayes, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to offer you an apology and a proposal. First, my apology. I was cruel to you when you arrived in Silver Creek. I said terrible things. I treated you with disrespect in front of the whole town. I have regretted my behavior ever since. You did not deserve that treatment. No one does. I am deeply sorry. Now my proposal. Since you left, I have had time to think. I have also had another experience with a mail-order bride. She arrived 3 weeks ago. She was young and pretty, but she was also spoiled and lazy. She complained about everything. She could not cook. She did not want to work. After 1 week, she left. She said country life was beneath her. This experience made me realize something. I was a fool. I was looking for youth and beauty when I should have been looking for character, for kindness, for a woman who knows how to make a house a home. I believe you are that woman, Mrs. Hayes. I have asked around town about you. People say you have been working at the Thornton Ranch, that you are hardworking and decent. I realize now that age does not matter. What matters is finding a good partner. I would like to offer you another chance. I have purchased a house in town, a proper house with a parlor and a garden. I have a steady income from my farm. I can give you a comfortable life, security, respectability, a place in the community. I know I hurt you, but I am asking you to forgive me, to give me a chance to make things right. We could have a good life together, Mrs. Hayes. I promise to treat you with the respect you deserve. If you are willing to consider this, please send word. I will come to the Thornton Ranch to speak with you properly, to court you the right way. I await your response with hope. Sincerely, Thomas Bennett. Margaret set the letter down on the table. She felt numb, confused. This was everything she had wanted when she came to Montana. A husband, a house in town, security, respectability. Thomas Bennett was offering her exactly what she had hoped for 6 months ago. But now, everything was different. She did not love Thomas Bennett. She barely knew him. And she knew that she had feelings for James. Deep feelings. Real feelings, but what did she really have with James? They held hands. They talked. They smiled at each other. But he had never said he loved her. He had never asked her to marry him. They were in some in-between place. Not employer and employee anymore. But not quite. What were they? Margaret heard the kitchen door open. James came in. He was dusty from work. He smiled when he saw her. Is that bread I smell? It smells wonderful. Then he saw her face. The smile disappeared. Margaret, what is wrong?
She could not speak.
She just held out the letter. James took it. He read it slowly. His expression did not change. But Margaret saw his jaw get tight, saw his hand grip the paper a little harder. When he finished, he set the letter down carefully. He did not look at her. What will you tell him? His voice was flat, controlled. I do not know, Margaret said honestly. I just got the letter. I have not thought about it, James nodded, still not looking at her. Thomas Bennett is a decent man. He has a good farm, a house in town. He could give you a comfortable life. He paused. He could give you what you came here for. James, you should do what is best for you, Margaret. Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were sad, but his face was calm. You came to Montana to be a wife, to have a home of your own, to be part of a community. Bennett can give you all of that. And what can you give me? The question came out more sharply than Margaret intended. But she needed to know. She needed him to say something. Anything. James looked away again. I can give you work, wages, a room in a ranch house miles from town, a life of cooking and cleaning for a man who barely knows how to talk about his feelings. His voice was bitter. That is not what you came here for. Margaret felt tears burning in her eyes. You are right. That is not what I came here for. She stood up. Her legs felt shaky. I came here for security, for a husband, for a house and a place in society. I came here for all the wrong reasons. She walked to where James stood. She made him look at her. But I found something I was not looking for. I found peace. I found purpose. I found as she took a breath. I found you, James, and I do not know what we are. I do not know what this is between us. You have never said. You have never told me how you feel. You have never asked me for anything. James's face was pained. I do not have the right to ask anything from you. Why not? Because you deserve better. His voice rose. He was angry now, but not at her. At himself. You deserve a man who can give you a proper home, a place in town, security. You deserve someone who is not broken by grief, who has not failed at marriage once already, who has not failed as a father. Stop! Margaret's voice was sharp. Stop telling me what I deserve. Stop deciding for me what I need. She was crying now. I am so tired of everyone else deciding what is best for me. My sister decided I should live with her. Thomas Bennett decided I was too old. Now you are deciding I should go with Bennett because he has a house in town. James looked stunned. I just want you to be happy. Then tell me the truth, James. Tell me what you want. Not what you think I should want. Not what you think is best for me, but what you want. James was silent for a long moment. Margaret could see him struggling, fighting with himself. Finally, he spoke. His voice was rough, low. I want you to stay. I want you to stay here with me. I want to wake up every morning and see you in my kitchen. I want to come in from work and smell your cooking. I want to sit with you in the evenings and just be with you. I want to hold your hand. I want to... He stopped, swallowed hard. I want you, Margaret. I want you to be mine, not my housekeeper, not my employee, mine. Margaret's heart was pounding. Then why have you never said so? Why have you never asked? Because I am afraid. The words came out like a confession. I am afraid you will say no. I am afraid I will fail you like I failed Sarah, like I failed my son. I am afraid I do not have enough to offer you. I am just a rancher, Margaret. I live miles from town. I have rough hands and a rough life. I cannot give you fancy things. I cannot give you parties and society. All I have is this ranch and a house that still gets cold in winter and a heart that has not worked right in 7 years. He took her hands. His grip was tight, desperate, but if you stay, I promise to try. I promise to be a good partner. To listen, to share my life with you, to make you happy if I can. I do not know if I can be what you need, but I want to try. I want to try so badly it scares me. Margaret was crying freely now, but she was also smiling. Finally. Finally, he was being honest. The wedding was 3 weeks later. Margaret wanted something simple and James agreed. They did not need a big ceremony. They did not need a crowd. They just needed each other and a few witnesses to make it legal. James had gone to town and spoken to the preacher. He had bought a ring, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. He was nervous when he showed it to Margaret, worried she might want something newer, something fancier, but Margaret loved it. She loved that it had history, that it meant something. She wore it on a chain around her neck until the wedding day. She touched it often, a reminder that this was real, that she was truly going to marry James Thornton. They decided to have the wedding at the ranch. In the parlor where they had spent so many evenings together, where they had talked and shared their stories, where they had fallen in love without even realizing it. The preacher came out from town. James invited his 2 ranch hands, Bill and Charlie. They were good men who had worked for James for years. They were happy to see their boss getting married. They said the ranch house had been too quiet for too long. Margaret had no family to invite. Her sister back in Boston had not written to her even once. That hurt, but she tried not to think about it. She was starting a new life. She did not need the approval of people who had never really valued her. The morning of the wedding, Margaret woke early. She could not sleep. She was too excited, too nervous, too happy. All the feelings mixed together until she felt like she might float away. She put on her best dress. It was dark blue with small white flowers. She had sewn it herself years ago. It was old-fashioned, maybe, but it was the nicest thing she owned. She pinned up her hair carefully. She let a few curls fall around her face. She looked at herself in the small mirror. She was 39 years old now. She had gray in her hair, lines on her face. She was not young. She was not beautiful like the women in magazines. But when she looked at herself today, she saw something different. She saw a woman who was loved. A woman who had survived loss and loneliness and had come through to the other side. A woman who was about to marry the man she loved. She smiled at her reflection. Then she went out to the parlor. James was already there. He wore his good suit, the one he saved for going to church. His hair was combed neat. His face was freshly shaved. He looked handsome. More than handsome. He looked happy. When he saw Margaret, his face lit up. He crossed the room in 3 long steps. He took both her hands in his. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "So beautiful." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She did not want to cry, not yet. There would be time for happy tears later. The preacher cleared his throat. Bill and Charlie stood to the side. They were grinning like fools. They had cleaned up for the occasion. Bill even had flowers in his buttonhole. The ceremony was short. The preacher said the traditional words. Words that people had been saying for hundreds of years. Words about love and honor, about sickness and health, about staying together until death. Margaret and James repeated the vows. Their voices were clear and strong. When it came time to exchange rings, James slid the gold band onto Margaret's finger. It fit perfectly, like it was always meant to be there. Margaret had bought a ring for James, too. She had saved her wages. It was not fancy, just a simple gold band, but James looked at it like it was the most precious thing in the world. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher said. "You may kiss your bride." James cupped Margaret's face in his hands. He kissed her gently, sweetly, a kiss full of promise and love. When they broke apart, Bill and Charlie clapped and whooped. Even the preacher was smiling, Mrs. Margaret Thornton. That was her name now. It felt strange and wonderful at the same time. They had a small celebration after. Margaret had made a cake. Just a simple pound cake with sugar frosting, but it was good. They had coffee and cake in the kitchen. Bill and Charlie told funny stories about things that had happened on the ranch. The preacher talked about other weddings he had performed. Everyone laughed and ate and enjoyed the moment. Finally, everyone left. The preacher headed back to town. Bill and Charlie went to the bunkhouse. They gave James knowing looks and slapped him on the back. James looked embarrassed but pleased, and then Margaret and James were alone. Married. The house was quiet. The sun was setting outside. Everything felt different. The same house, the same rooms. But everything had changed. They stood in the parlor, both suddenly shy. It was strange. They had lived together for months. They had talked and laughed and shared meals. But this was different. This was their wedding night. They were husband and wife now. James broke the silence first. "I have something for you." He went upstairs and came back with a small package wrapped in brown paper. Margaret opened it carefully. Inside was a book. A beautiful leather-bound book with gold writing on the cover. Jane Eyre. One of Margaret's favorite stories. She had mentioned it once, months ago. She was surprised James remembered. "I sent away for it," James said. He looked nervous. "I wanted to give you something special. Something just for you." Margaret hugged the book to her chest. Then she hugged James. "It is perfect." "Thank you." They sat together on the sofa. Close. James put his arm around Margaret. She leaned against his shoulder. They did not talk. They just sat there together as husband and wife. Later they went upstairs, to the room that had been James's alone for 7 years. Margaret had cleaned it, made it nice, put fresh sheets on the bed, added curtains to the windows, made it a room for 2 people instead of 1. That night was gentle, tender. They were both nervous, both a little clumsy, but they were also patient with each other, kind. They took their time, learning each other, loving each other, and when they finally fell asleep, they slept wrapped in each other's arms, together. Home. The next morning, Margaret woke up first. She looked at James sleeping beside her. His face was peaceful, young-looking in sleep. She still could not quite believe this was real, that she was married, that this kind, good man was her husband. She got up quietly. She did not want to wake him. She went downstairs and started breakfast. It felt the same as every other morning, but also completely different. Because now she was not just making breakfast for her employer, she was making breakfast for her husband. When James came down, he wrapped his arms around her from behind. He kissed her neck. "Good morning, wife," Margaret laughed. "Good morning, husband." They ate breakfast together. Then James went out to work. Margaret did her usual chores, cleaning, washing, mending, but everything felt lighter, happier. She caught herself humming, smiling for no reason, just happy to be alive, happy to be here. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Margaret and James fell into a rhythm as a married couple. They worked together, talked together, slept together. They were a team, partners in every way. Sometimes people from town would visit, neighbors bringing pies or preserves, the preacher checking in. Even Thomas Bennett came by once. He was awkward and polite. He had heard about the marriage. He wanted to wish them well. Margaret appreciated that. It took courage to face them after everything. James shook his hand, told him there were no hard feelings. They all moved on. One evening in late summer, Margaret and James were sitting on the porch. The sun was setting. The sky was painted in beautiful colors. They were holding hands, just enjoying the quiet. "Are you happy?" James asked suddenly. Margaret looked at him. "Why would you ask that?" James shrugged. "I just want to be sure. I know this life is hard sometimes. I know you do not have fancy things. I know we live far from town. I just want to know that you are happy." Margaret squeezed his hand. "James, I am happier than I ever thought possible. Do you remember when we first met? I was sitting on my trunk at the train station. I had nowhere to go, no hope. I thought my life was over." She looked out at the ranch, at the fields and the barn and the mountains in the distance. "You gave me more than a job, more than a roof over my head. You gave me a home, a real home, not just a place to sleep, but a place where I belong." where I am valued, where I am loved. She turned back to him. I am so happy, James. Every single day I am grateful. For you, for this life, for everything. James pulled her close. I am grateful too. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions. But you brought life back into this house, into me. I love you, Margaret, more than I ever thought I could love anyone again. They kissed, soft and sweet. Then they sat together and watched the sun go down. That night, as Margaret lay in bed next to her husband, she thought about her journey. She had traveled all the way from Boston to Montana looking for one thing. Looking for a husband, a home, security, a place to belong. She had found all of that, but not in the way she expected. She had not found it by pretending to be younger, by lying about who she was. She had found it by being herself, by working hard, by being honest, by opening her heart to love even when she was scared. Thomas Bennett had rejected her for being too old. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen, like the end of everything. But now Margaret saw it differently. That rejection had led her to James, to this life, to real love. She thought about the woman she was when she stepped off that train, scared, desperate, ashamed. And she thought about who she was now. A wife, a partner, a woman who knew her own worth.